Okay, well, we're just starting. We're going to miss a little bit. I just started the recording here. So what we're looking at here, to me, are two different activities. The activity, it says identify new testing sites. This is the performance metric for the activity here. From what I can see in this activity, it doesn't have anything to do with the number of clients. What am I missing?
Well, you're missing the fact that. Go ahead, Christina.
No, I'm just gonna say, so you are correct. There are two. Can you go back to the VMSG screen?
Hang on a second. Here we go. Whoops, sorry. Come here. There we go. Okay.
Okay. So those two things are both performance metrics in this. The one is for clients and one is for testing sites.
Okay.
Right on that. And so we want to measure both, and we have some activities that have 4 or 5 measurements. So pretty much our entire plan is this way, that we're going to have different metrics for each activity.
Well, in VMSG, the performance metric indicates how do I know when I've successfully completed the activity. The activity here is purely about testing sites. The second activity was about people, so it's really a different activity. And I don't see how you have multiple metrics for an activity when the metrics don't add up to the activity. That's what I'm having trouble with.
Hey, Fred. So what we did for the EHE plan is that we actually made the activity section in VMSG. We entered the measurements. That's what we did for EHE. So I slightly, changed that, or I guess that's how I was instructed while we were discussing this at the beginning with Tallahassee. So in the activity section for VMSG, we put the measurements.
Okay.
So
What
you're saying is you bypass the activity, which is sometimes sometimes the activity that we have here is really broad and may not correspond well to the measurements. So Abril, if that is what you did for EHE, maybe we need to consider that as an alternative way of presenting the measurements in the integrated plan.
Well, I think what we discussed yesterday was that, and I'm going to put it in the chat if I can figure out where I am. Where did I go? What we discussed yesterday was that the names of our levels of the pyramid, if you will, do not correspond to the names in VMSG, which is fine because you said we can do that. So I'm the way that we were looking at it was that, and I'm going to chat it so you can see what I'm talking about, is that this is how we would structure it. So we would put the goal as the group. We would put the goal as the group, then the objective as the service, the strategy as the goal, the activities. Do you see what I'm saying? Activities as objectives. Does that?
Yeah. That's exactly what I did for EHE.
And I think that's the way that that's the way that we were going to structure it. And in that way, it worked to put the measurements would then be what you're saying would be the activities.
Yeah, you could do it that way. Now, the question is, the way that it has laid out here, you have goals, objectives, and then the measurements being the activities. What am I missing about that? It's related, and you're saying the group would be the goal, the service initiative would be the objective, the goals would be the strategies. And again, to me, the strategy is more of just kind of an additional definition for the objective in there. And then we have objectives as activities and measurements. see, the problem I have with that is the activity only defines what we're trying to accomplish by measurement number one. From what I can see, and again, I don't understand the nomenclature, measurement number two has nothing to do with that activity. So the idea is, why wouldn't you have an activity that says increase the number of clients enrolled in TTRA services to new HIV care and Ryan White to 273 by 2026 or something along that line, versus, and by the way, the measurements could be laid out that way, or a couple words added to make the measurements into activities, and then maybe at that point in time you just put the activity in as a note in the objective field or something along that line.
I mean, I see your point as far as this, but I don't want to get too hung up on this one sample, because this is one of like 90 pages of,
Okay.
of objectives.
Fred, I have a question, Fred. So after Christina, what I have.
Yeah, so I mean, that's something that we would probably either figure out internally or bring to our, we would bring to our evaluation team when they meet. Yeah, so that's, that like I said, I don't want to get so hung up on this specific one. I think our concern is more of getting the structure built, so using it so that it matches our plan here.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it the way you're looking at it for sure. The question is, what value does that activity, where it says activity L1.1a, what value does that add to the plan if in fact the measurements are truly the activities, which it makes sense what you're doing is, increase the number of testing sites serving vulnerable populations from 24 to 48 would kind of be the definition of the activity, which makes perfect sense to me. But the question is, what does that text at the activity level add to it other than maybe just a note again in the objective?
Yeah, and we might end up doing it that way, but I mean, one of the things, but these are all things, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, that we want to measure, I think is part of what the situation is like that we want to know how many people were enrolled in TTRA, and we want to know how many testing sites.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is I'm agreeing with you that the measurements could become the activities, but then when I look at the activity itself, it really doesn't add value to the pyramid, if you will, other than just being kind of a definition, because that activity, from what I'm seeing, only applies to measurement one. So why have the duplicate in there? What does that bring?
Well, because if I can jump in here, Carla has texted something in here in the message in the chat, which I think is important. We ran this plan through HRSA and got HRSA to approve the structure that we have for this plan, which is basically goal, objective, strategy, activity, and measurement. And rather than argue over whether or not the way HRSA approved the plan matches one definition or another about how we're doing the measurement, I think what we're trying to do here is try to get into where we can track the progress on the broad activities, which are actually part of the strategies. And like I say, we got 90 pages of strategies and objectives and goals that basically at the time that we are putting all this together, what we're trying to do is trying to move the plan that HRSA approved into the VMSG for purposes of tracking. One thing that we're really on target with here is that the measurements, however it is that we may define them at the end of the day, is going to be where the rubber meets the road in terms of performance, performance evaluation. And that's where, Carla is unfortunately kind of stuck on the only able to text right now. But at the end of the day, what I'm looking at here is how do we embed the hierarchy that we are currently using in the plan that HRSA approved? How do we embed that hierarchy into VMSG?
Okay, so the plan is basically got to stay fixed in this because it's already been approved plan. So we're going to make this fit into what we have in the VMSG model. Based on again, what? Go ahead.
That's where I think like we can use that kind, that breakdown or that nomenclature change that I chatted.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's kind of what we were thinking when we were playing with it yesterday.
Okay, so the only thing I see that might help is where we have, so if we had the group as being the overall plan, underneath that, the service or initiative would then go straight down to the goal. So that would be improve the HIV related health outcomes as the initiative. And then the strategy would become part of that because again, looking at the strategy, I don't know that it has to be an independent plan element in itself, or could it be combined with the objective as part of that plan element? Because it's more, to me, it looks like an additional definition of what's in the objective. So the objective becomes the activity. I'm sorry, where are we? Services would be the goal. Service initiative would be the goal. The goals would be the objective and the strategy. And then we're down at the objective being the activity text there, and the activities would be the measurements, maybe worded slightly differently as to an action to be an activity. So the only thing I see different would be combining the strategy with the objective in the objective field or the goal field.
I mean, the only concern I have with that is that, several, objectives have multiple strategies.
Okay.
It's not just one strategy per objective. Some of them have, some strategies have some objectives have multiple strategies that have multiple activities that have multiple measurements. It's there's a lot. That's what we kind of wanted. We were looking at doing sort of like what you're saying. Could we look at the database again?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if I go back to the objective level, this is where I had the strategy. You can have, as many of the strategies listed in here, so they become part of in this case, it would be the goal. We would move it up to the goal level. And then you could have the strategies listed in here as part of that, the goal, which then, is the objective text in there. And I think that would be probably the closest model to making the plan fit into VMSG is doing it that way. I'll tell you what, let me go in and actually put it in there that way, and we'll take a look at it and just see how it kind of feels. So we were going to say that the goal would go into the service or initiative. And then the objective would become the goal, and adding the strategy in there. And then you could have, strategy 1 through 100 down in here if you wanted to. So then we have the objective, or has become basically the strategy and the goal, and then the activity will become the objective. The activity will become the objective here. And then underneath that, we would have the activities, which would be And again, if it's possible to just reword that a little bit to make it an action, it'd be okay. But if not, this is fine. So number of new testing sites, and then we were talking about a number, so I'd make that a QM activity. I'm just going to put some random dates in here for now. What was our target? Was 48 over the period of time. Decimal, and it would be new testing sites. Save that. And then our next activity would be number of clients. Now this is, again, this is a monthly total or an annual total?
That would be
That is an annual total.
That would be the final total at the end of the plan cycle, which is 2026.
Okay. So what we,
So that's another question that we have. Once you get this in, we can discuss that question.
yeah, we'll look at different ways to do that. Um, Now, there's might be a way we can do this a little better using a quality assurance activity, because it is, we could set it for an annual cycle and to be measuring it during the annual cycle here. But
Right.
so now if we take a look at this plan, starting here, so this is what that same plan would look like based on this.
Yeah, I think that looks right. I guess, so the note is where the strategy is.
Yeah, and you could have as many of the strategies in there as you wanted to.
But each strategy has its own objective and activity, so is that gonna be a problem?
So the strategies, hang on a second, let me go back to here. So the strategy is part of the objective in the way that we have it structured in there now. Are there separate activities for strategy? So you might have strategy 1 here, and then it would have an activity. Strategy 2 would have a different activity, or would it be objective and strategy with different activities?
Both. Yeah, so like we have, like you see there, you have L11 and L11A is the activity.
Uh-huh.
So there's also an L11B, an activity L11C through E actually, or F in this case, and then we have under the same objective, then we have another objective, L2, with a similar thing. Then let's see if we go to L3. Yeah, so I mean, under this objective, there are 3 strategies, and and like I said, there's a variety of activities under each strategy, and then measurements under those. So
Okay, so each strategy would have potentially different activities.
That's right.
Yes.
Under the same objective.
Under the
Um,
same, yeah,
right, under the same objective, right.
yeah. And just
But then
to
there's multiple strategies. So one objective can have multiple strategies.
That's right.
And then
And one of the reasons why we have these L's, for example, and this is, you're only seeing one page out of a whole bunch, because we have L strategies for linkage, we have R strategies for retention, or R objectives and strategies for retention, and V for viral load, and S for stigma. We have underneath all of these, for even under the idea here under NHOS goal number 2, okay, we have a whole bunch of stuff that has both linkage strategies and health outcome strategies. So, as we put the plan together, we embedded these with essentially letters and numbers for objective strategies and activities that allow us to look at this as an outline, as a nested set of goals, objectives, and strategies. Abril has a crosswalk that she's walked into herself for E, and I don't know whether Abril, you wanted to chime in on how you did this, because I see this here in the text, but I maybe it'd be better if you explained, looking at the integrated plan goals that we have here. I haven't seen your EHE goals, but if they're like this, are they in the same kind of hierarchy that we have here?
Yes, so yes, our EHE structure, looks is the same as the integrated plan. So basically the last exercise, Fred, that you enter, that's how I have it. Like the objectives that I have in my EHE plan are under the goals in the MSG. And the activities that I had in the EHE plan are under the objectives in the MSG. And the measurements that I had are under activities. And the note that showed, that you just showed when, like just a few minutes ago, about the strategies, that's how I have it as well. So I put the strategies under the notes for the activities.
okay,
So that's exactly, so what you did is basically mimic what I did for EHE.
except
Okay.
you put the notes, the strategy in the activity versus the strategy being in the objective. Is that right?
The strategy, I put it as a note under the objective, because I do have, is the same, like I do have different, let's say, objectives in BMSG under the strategies. You know what I mean? So there will be multiple tabs, right, under the objectives in BMSG that are gonna be under the same activities.
How did you handle
The thing is that
those strategies?
it's exactly what you did. It's basically what you did. The notes, if you go back, I don't know if you can go back to the other screen.
Yep. Oops. Ah,
Mm, yes, so basically what it says there, notes under the goals, that's where I listed the strategies. So I put under the different, let's say, goals, right, in DMSG, is gonna be like strategy 1, and maybe goal 5.2, 5.2, it will be strategy 1 still, and then maybe goal 5.3, it will be strategy 2.
okay.
So I just put it as notes. So exactly how you have it here is how I did for EHE.
So what you did is combined what we have as a goal in here, which was the objective on the other form, and the strategy together as one element, and then underneath that put the activities for that strategy, and then you had goal 5.2 would be the same text in there, but strategy number 2, and then the activities under that. Is that right?
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. What do you think, Robert?
we've used the same words in so many different ways here. I'm trying to figure out more than anything else right now. I'm depending on Christina to be able to see, number one, would it be best for us to renumber the elements of the integrated plan so we have a reasonable crosswalk between the paper integrated plan and the VMSG
Bob, I
nomenclature?
don't think that's gonna be necessary because this looks like, it's gonna number it anyway. So, while I would like to keep our lettering in there as we have it, if this is going to call it like Initiative 5 or Initiative, however it's, it'll start at 1, obviously, but, then I don't know that there's any benefit of redoing our whole plan with new numbers if they're just gonna be renumbered in here in the database, which is fine. Then we can just adopt the database numbering system once we get it in there. But to me, the only thing I think we're stuck on right now is the goal and the strategy, because it looks like, the objective is fine as it is here, and and then the measurements as the activities is fine. That's kind of how we were looking at it yesterday. So, if it could just be, my only concern with the strategy being a note is that as multiple notes get added, that that it sort of gets buried and you don't automatically know what strategy you're working on.
That could, yeah, it's possible because you could put other types of notes in there. What you might want to do
Right.
is, leave the strategy at the top, put the other notes underneath it, something along that line.
And I could appreciate that, but if we're talking about, multiple people putting in things and everybody always being doing that the right way, that's a lot to ask. So the one thing that we sort of looked at yesterday was, like if we would have the goal, if you looked at the goal and then put that strategy just as part of the goal. So it would be, like that.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot more sense because that way that's not going to change based on whatever notes are put in over here.
Right. So if we just did, and then we could have the next, the next goal could be the same, but with a different strategy.
Exactly. That would fit. I think that's what Abril was saying, that's how they have it in there. So that would make perfect sense to do it that way.
Yeah, and we talked about that, I think, yesterday, Bob. I think we kind of played around with doing it that way. So I think that can work. That works for me. I think that's more, that works for me if everybody's,
If it works for
comfortable.
you, it works for me, Christina. I mean, the thing about it is that you can see Abril's chats here that say that the reason that they did it the particular way they did it is because the VMSG system cannot capture different measurements under the same activity. The
Right.
activity and the okay, and
Right, but if we're
so-
putting in the measurements as the activity, I think we'll be okay.
that's
No,
right.
that's what
So-
I'm saying, Christina.
Right.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. That the
yeah.
reason why we when we translated our plan into the VMSG, we had to, make those adjustments in order to capture the information that we wanted it to get, right, and enter the data needed. Basically adjusting to what the system is able to capture, or the way that
Yeah.
is able to lay it down. And then my other comment is that do not, that's based on my experience entering the information for EHE, which is basically the same thing for the integrated plan. Do not worry as much as the notes being under the objective, because basically what I have, then my notes under the objectives, it will be basically the strategy, as I mentioned, and then maybe other note has our key partners or anything else that I added has an
Right.
important note.
I mean,
But
I can, right, I understand that. I just think, if we put this, if we only have the strategy, we can put it in both places, but if we only have it in notes, then it has more of a chance of being buried at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Christina. If you put it under, the goal, then it'll just be persistent and it's always there and you
And
can refer to
right.
it.
Yeah, I think that is the best way to do it. If you're just basically replicating that text in there and then adding strategy 1, 2, 3, 4 at the end, that gives you an independent entity at the goal level to add the specific objectives for that strategy / goal and then the activities for that.
Yes, I think that will work.
That makes sense.
Okay, I think that this looks good to me. And okay, so I don't know if anyone else has, because we had another question about tracking the data. Fred, I don't know if we're going over that today.
Tracking the data, meaning what?
Like when you go into the activities, or what we calling measurements, but when you go into the activities tab.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so for instance, this one, we want to have ultimately the 48 is for the end of our plan. Basically, let me see if I can make the question concise. Is that we want to be able to have data that we track on an either semi-annually or annual basis.
Okay.
So we want to be able to say, in 2022 we did 36 sites, in 2023, 38, and be able to look at that progress over the life of the plan.
Yep.
So
What you're doing in here with the QM activity is we're saying our target is to get to 48. In this case, I put 24, should be 26 in here. And right now it says we're at 36. And that's going to be the historical record that's kept here, that we are currently at 36 of 48 over here, if you see on the right.
Okay,
okay,
that
now
makes
what
sense.
about ones like the second one, the number of clients enrolled? For that's annually, it's not cumulative. We
Right.
want to do 273 this year and 285 next year and so on.
And what I would
That-
probably do is at the end of the year, I would update this activity. So this activity at the end of the year, you put in, hopefully 273, save that. Then you're going to update the activity for the next year, put in the new dates of, let's say it's 1/1/25 through 12/31 of 25, and you're going to be measuring it. And however long you measure it over, if you measure it monthly or whatever, it's going to keep this rolling total for you. The history file will then have the record of each year that you had in here and the actual status.
Okay, so that is one of the things I was looking at earlier. The history file then would enable you to say we did 230 clients this year, we did 240 clients the next year,
Yep.
we did 275 clients, and the next year after that we had another COVID epidemic and we did 110. But the point is, the reason I'm saying that is that rather than say that, oh my, the 110 is a bad percentage of the previous year, we are basically saying we are setting each year's goals for the measurement. We're setting each year's
Right.
goals separately, and then we are memorializing them in the history.
Right.
So if we did a report that said this is the trend for how we were doing it, we would not be losing anything in there.
Exactly. And that history file is what gets mapped here in the, it wouldn't have anything in there now, but that would be the chart that you could look at over the entire time of the number that you did each year, looking at the growth. You'd also in the history file put a note in there that says, we got COVID back again and we only did 110 this year because of COVID or something like that.
But what we're trying to do here is maintain the integrity the difference between a cumulative number of activities, a number of testing sites, number of physicians enrolled in the plan cumulatively, stuff like that,
Right.
as something which is a cumulative target, as opposed to an annual target where essentially on the first of the year we reset it to 0 and our goal is to make that total for the year. Number of condoms distributed, for example, it doesn't matter how many we did last year. The question is, how many are we doing it this year?
Right.
The question, and there are other ones in here, incidentally, which I have to say are really nice, because when we looked at the different activity types, there that we have some things in the integrated plan which are basically yes and no. Did we do a survey? Did we do this? Did we do that? Okay. And once we've done it, we've done it. Okay. So that's cool. We can get that in there, and that's going to make it easy to track. The biggest thing is to start from the, go ahead, to start from the measurement to make sure we can track the data on a regular basis and go up from there as to however we need to reflect this in the pyramid. Go ahead, Christina. I'm going to shut up here.
Yeah, no. So then, as far as, because now we're basically at the end of the second year of our plan. So would we be able to put the start and end date of like 2020, January 2022 to December 2022, and then put in the amount that we did and add that now?
Yeah. What you do is you put those dates in here, put in whatever value you had for that period of time. Then you're going to save it. Then you're going to go back to the history file. You're going to click on the date. You're going to change that date to whatever the end of the year, 12/31 of 22. And then it's going to add that history record in there from your previous history.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And which one was that? The time, what icon did you click?
Oh, first of all, I'm going to go in and set the dates for, like you're talking, let's say it was 1/1 of 22 to 12/31 of 24. I have 1/1/24 to 12/31 of 22. So I'm looking for the historical record for 22. Then I'm going to set this value to what it was at the end of 22. Okay. And then I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to create a history record. Then I go to the history file, and then that's going to be at the top up here to start with. Then I just go down and change this date to 12/31 of 22, save it, and that becomes the history record for that date in 2022.
Okay, but even if you didn't change that date, it would still read on the right-hand side that those are the dates? When you go back to that, when you're,
well, it's going to whatever date you put in here, right? But in order to get it, in date sequence so that you can generate the chart and all that kind of stuff, you just change the date in the history file.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh.
That worked.
So the advantage of that, and this reflects something that Carla had mentioned earlier, when we generate, and we did this the other day, and we were talking to Sandra Estevez about some of these linkage goals. The plan itself, as approved by HRSA, uses 2021 data as the basis for the plan.
Baseline, yeah.
So we got numbers for 2021. We also have numbers in some cases for 2022. We're going to have numbers in 2023 in a very short period of time, so we can start populating the history without changing. And this is what Carla and we were talking about before when we were talking about the linkage goals with Sandra Estevez yesterday, is that our purpose here is not to update the integrated plan, but to update the history file.
Right. Yeah, and you can do that again, just like I showed you. You can do that as far back as you want to. You just have to put in here the data that was relevant at the date that you're trying to remember, if you will, and then you save it. When you save it, it creates a history record. You go to the history record, you change the date on the history record, and everything is updated for history.
And these entries, they would be cumulative, right? Like on the bottom, I see 36. So if you enter another, like let's say we do 38 for another year, would then that be cumulative and that number would increase and the percentage would be over 100?
Now you can do it that way. The other thing you can do if you want to start a new year is you can say minus 74, start again at 0. So a couple ways. If you wanted to keep it cumulative, you could do that. There's another option on a QM activity that says just enter the total value. So it takes away that cumulative in here. So you're just entering the particular data for that period of time. So you got two different options on it.
Okay.
For what you're looking at here, if you're just going to do it on an annual basis, it might make more sense to leave it this way.
Yeah, but what you're saying on an annual basis, if we wanted to make it an annual basis, we set the start value to 0.
You could, if you wanted to, or you could just go at the end of the year and let's say we were at 273 or what? Yeah, that's not what was the first one. What was our number?
36 was where I think we started.
Okay, we'll just say we're at 36 in here for now. And then this is going to be the end, well, in this case, it'd be 2024. And in 2025, we reset these dates and we just change this value to whatever it happens to be, 45. And then we go ahead and save that. And then we have the history record for 2025. I can just go in and change that particular record to 12/31/22, save that. Now it becomes this bottom record down here with that date in it. So you can change that all over. So all you're doing is basically creating a record as it would have been on the date that you're interested in, saving it, and then you go into and change the date to that in the history file.
That makes sense.
Okay, so what does that look like when you go in the history file and graph it then?
But we can look at it. I don't know if there's any data. Yeah, this is just because of what we put in there. That's what it would look like. But you would have, in this case, you'd have the chart, moving along across the entire date range that we've entered the data in there.
Okay.
What else do you want to see?
All right. Let's go back to that other one that you had the multiple entries for multiple years. That was
History file?
yeah. Okay, now if what we're looking at here, I'm looking at who and when the actions updated, the activities. I'm looking at the targets over here. The
Target and
targets.
the actual, yeah.
So what I'm seeing is okay. See what I'm
You can
looking
set
here
those-
is the start and ends are all 2024.
I think that's just because this is a sample, Bob.
I didn't
Right. He didn't change the dates, I guess.
I didn't-
Yeah,
down here. So
yeah, I don't think you have to worry about that. This is just by way of an example.
No, I'm not mistrusting the system. I'm just trying to figure out how to use it.
yeah,
No, so initially, I think when it's first set up, all our start dates will be 1/1/22, and our end dates will be 12/31/22, and then we'll basically be putting in our baseline,
Okay.
and that's our 2022 data.
yep,
And then we'll be going in, and I mean, we kind of have to go through each one 3 times, basically.
right, yeah.
Just put start date and end date. You put in a new start, then it'll be, 1/1/23 to 12/31/23, put in whatever, this year's data is, and then save that, and then, like Fred said, like, we'll change the historical date so that when we look at it, it looks like we put that data in it in 22, this in 23. It makes sense. It's just it's a couple extra steps, but then once we're, I guess at the beginning of each year, we just go through and clean the dates out for things that we are tracking on an annual basis.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and when you do update it, you're going to want to update your target too for that particular year, which is right here, the target.
Right. If we have a new target, right.
Yeah. Yeah, if you had a target back in 2022 that was 30, you'd change that target so it'll calculate the proper percentage and everything.
Right.
And so if our target for 2022 is 250 clients and our 2023 rate would go be 260 clients, and we would just make that change, and whatever it is that we managed to do that year would be reflected as a percentage of our target that we'd actually achieved.
Exactly. Exactly.
This is sweet.
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
I really wish we could have been in there a year ago.
Yeah, well, what can I say?
But that's okay. But this is great. Yeah, that will work. That'll work.
Okay. All right. So, okay, what's our plan forward? You were going to talk about metrics tomorrow, Fred?
Well, tomorrow we're going to talk about all the charts and graphs that we saw. We're going to go into the detail on what we you just went through this part of it, but the dashboard, the different reports that are available, how do we create a VMSG public page around this stuff, that sort of thing. That's what's going to be tomorrow's plan. It's performance monitoring tools.
Okay.
Now, if you guys wanted to send over that complete plan, I'd be happy to get it started in the system based on what we talked about today, kind of structure it in there a little bit, so you guys have a starting point to go in and enter the rest of the information in there. Or if you guys want to take a shot at doing that, that's fine as well.
I think what would be nice about that, and Christina, I would leave the choice of segments up to you. But if we wanted to send Fred a pinch of the plan. I mean, it's not, to say, here's a care and treatment area, or here's a linkage area, or here's a prevention area that we can use as a jumping off place. I'd like to have a little chunk of prevention so Abril can weigh in on how this works with us, and a care and treatment section that we can do, so we can come up and do some of this. What time is our meeting tomorrow? What time is our conference call?
Let me look here. It is at
2 p.m., right?
2 p.m. Yes.
Oh, 2 p.m. Okay, that'll give you time to do it. No, I'm simply saying this because what we're trying to do is we're trying to fit something that we have worked on for 3 years, 2 years actually, but we're working on the beginning in year 3. We've been working on this stuff since 2021. Okay. And what I want to do is make sure that we're comfortable with the adaptations that we have to make in the nomenclature of the plan in order for us to feel comfortable when we are not only entering data into the plan, into the VMSG, but also when we are producing reports for the public, and when we are doing reports for our own internal comparison and tracking. Okay.
And remember that the reports, we can manage the nomenclature on the reports separately. So once we decide that this is the way we want it, we can change the names on these reports to make them match what you already have. I think we talked about that the other day, the synonyms function.
Oh, yeah. And that's why I thought we were going to be able to do that in creating the data files from the get-go rather than just at the report phase.
Yeah, just at the report end.
Yeah, that sounds good. So yeah, I can send you some of of each section as they stand now, and yeah, I mean
Yeah, send it over and I'll get some of it put in there for tomorrow's meeting. We can talk a little bit more about it.
Sounds good. Yeah. and
Okay,
some you'll see,
Christina,
yeah.
are you just gonna do an extract of a couple of sections, or are you gonna just start at the beginning under prevention and go forward?
I was gonna just do a part of, a part of each section, some of each section.
Okay, so if you would make sure that all the rest of us on the call know what you've sent to Fred.
Yeah, I'll copy everyone.
Yeah, because I'm no, well, the reason I'm saying this is because a lot of us, myself, Christina, Abril, Carla, we've all invested heavily in the process, and we are all going to be looking really critically at how this translates into VMSG. So we want to be sure that we are really comfortable with how this new suit fits. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Okay. Well, that's great.
Okay. Well, our time's about up for today. If there's anything else you'd like to look at real quickly, we can do that, or we'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for your time today. I think we got a lot accomplished, at least is figuring out the way that your plan models into the dashboard nicely. So it should be real good.
All right. Thanks,
All
Fred.
right.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
And